You know, I think most of us envision SHTF event as something, massive. Think about like a huge mushroom cloud in the sky, polar shifts, maybe a worldwide pandemic, or maybe a super volcano going off in Yellowstone. I mean, I don't think there's any way we couldn't identify that something has happened and that, yes, we may be in deep, deep trouble. But I think SHTF isn't always so glaringly evident. You have to excuse Xander. He's running all over because I'm making a video. So anyway, please excuse the background noise. But, when I was a kid, I remember watching this black and white, terrible B movie, Creature from the Black Lagoon. And of course, they had dumped pollution and stuff in the lake, if I remember right, and somehow it transformed this fish into this huge creature that hunted people. Well, I think if you saw that creature from the Black Lagoon, you would know you had a personal SHTF event. But what you might not realize is what they dumped in the lake might be even a bigger SHTF event. The water you drink, the food you eat, the soil you grow your vegetables in, all could be contaminated. And you may not even know it, but it definitely can be affecting your health now or in the future. And it might not be where you're living now. It might be the neighborhood you grew up in. Because a lot of these things can take 20 years or so to have an effect. So talking about B science fiction movies, let me read this. This sounds like a science fiction movie. Last week there was an article in the paper that said, bright green liquid gushed from a freeway wall onto I-696 during Friday's rush hour in Madison Heights, which is in Detroit. Really? Doesn't that sound like, I don't know, maybe the green blob? But what it was, turned out a defunct metal plating company had resided there, and it was a known contamination site. In fact, the U.S. Environmental Protection Service had spent $1.5 million in 2017 to 2018 to clean it up. But they said that the initial $1.5 million was not intended to clean up everything. We knew there was contamination of soil, which would eventually need to be addressed. But because there was no threat to drinking water or otherwise threaten public health, the site did not meet the criteria for Superfund listing. Well, over the weekend, they had to pump out thousands, that's right, thousands of gallons of this green liquid. And after testing, they found out it was the highly toxic hexavalent chromium, also known as chromium-6. And if you remember again, we're talking about movies here, right? Erin Brockovich with Julia Roberts. She was fighting the large utility company because of chromium-6 and the health problems it was causing. Liver damage, reproductive issues, respiratory illness. Chromium-6 is a known carcinogen. Now, interestingly enough, you do a little more research on this, and the site of that electric plating company, the former owner, or the father of the present owner, I guess, had dug a pit 10 by 10 feet wide and just kept dumping that green sludge in there. And every so often he would pump it out, filter it, and then pour it into the city sewers. So this was just one instance, but nearly 200 million Americans across all 50 states have been exposed to higher than recommended levels of chromium-6 in their tap water. Not good, huh? Talk about maybe a hidden SHTF. Now, in Western Michigan, there's something else going on, and that is in Rockford, the site of the Wolverine Worldwide Company. And they used to be known exclusively for making their hush puppies. And the hush puppy shoes and boots were protected by Scotchgard. And guess what compound is in Scotchgard? Yep, PFAS. Well, now the company is worldwide and doesn't even actually make their shoes in Rockford anymore, and they now have Merrill and a lot of other brands. But when they were the tannery and when they were making the shoes in Rockford, there are now very, very high levels of PFAS in various areas, and it's causing a lot of concern. Nearly 800 homes in the area is affected, and it has more than 10,000 times the rate of recommended PFAS in the drinking water. Now, some of these people have already contracted cancer or loved ones have died of cancer, and you have to wonder, was that because of the drinking water or not? Hard to know, and that's why it's hard to pin down some of the problems from chemical pollution. Now, the bad thing about PFAS is what they call a forever chemical. Yeah, it stays in your body forever. It doesn't break down. So, the more you get of it, the more that stays in your body and can cause some really adverse health effects. In fact, I read that PFAS can now be found in the blood of nearly 90% of all Americans, and it has even been found in polar bears in the Arctic Circle. And I guess that's because it worked its way up the food chain from, it was in the fish, the seals ate the fish, and then the polar bears ate the seals. Now, to make it worse, Wolverine Worldwide had dumped it in various areas. And they even, get this, gave it at one time as sludge to local farmers. They were told that the lime and organic material in it made great fertilizers. So a lot of land could be affected. You know, when I first started thinking about this, I thought, we're going to say the Flint water crisis. That's the worst. Well, guess what? According to experts, it is the worst contamination in Michigan in over 40 years. Wow. Okay. So PFAS is something to be concerned of. And I bet you'll find a problem with it in your state too. According to this one site, it has tainted over 11,000 sites in Michigan. Well, remember how I said that was the worst disaster in 40 years? Well, in 1973, the year I graduated from high school, we had what was called the PBB disaster. And that PBB stood for polybrominated biphenyl, and it was a fire retardant produced by a company in St. Louis, Michigan. And there was a big oops moment where they mixed the fire retardant in with cattle food feed. And of course, then that cattle feed went to various places all throughout Michigan. It turned out that more than 500 farms were contaminated. They had to quarantine and destroy 30,000 cattle, 4,500 pigs, 1,500 sheep, and 1.5 million chickens. And approximately 85% of the Michigan public received some exposure to this. So that would include me. And this is a contaminated tied to cancer, thyroid, and hormonal disorders. Well, I'm hypothyroid, but that's ran in my family. So was it because of this? I don't know. But they're still doing studies on long-term effects from exposure to PBB. And there was a movie made about this too. It was called Bitter Harvest with Ron Howard. And some studies have shown that it is linked to cancer, conditions affecting the liver, the thyroid, pancreas, ulcerative colitis, hormone and immune system interference, high cholesterol, pre-eclampsia in pregnant women, and negative effects on growth, learning, and behavior in infants and children. Right now, there was a newer study done a couple years ago, and some 46 Michigan locations had PFAS compounds in their groundwater that exceeded the EPA's 70 parts per trillion health advisory level. And it was found in 17 rivers, lakes, streams, and ponds throughout Michigan, and they have do not eat fish advisory warnings. And Last year, we also had a problem with PFAS we had to put out an issue, do not eat deer in a certain area. First time ever in the nation. And that was because of a military base in Oscoda, Michigan. And they used this fire retardant, was in that foam that they spray in all their training exercises. So it contaminated the soil and got into the groundwater. In 2015, these chemicals were largely phased out of production. But of course, they're still being used in China and other parts of the world. Now you might say, I don't have to worry. I drink bottled water. Well, there's no guarantee that PFAS or chromium-6 isn't in your bottled water. And there's no legal limit for chromium-6 in bottled water. So maybe it's better, maybe it's not. Now, I know many of you use the Berkey filter, and I believe the regular filter does filter out chromium-6, 99%, and the black Berkey filter is supposed to remove, I think, the PFAS and the PFOA and those type of chemicals. And just 5 years after that 1973 disaster, which was the biggest disaster in the nation, we had what they called the bomb train. That sounds really bad, huh? And it was a train that derailed from Dow Chemical up near Newaygo, and it was carrying toxic chemicals. And we were told that there was no health safety for the public. It was being taken care of, but not really the case. And they just did a recent test, and they're still finding the possible carcinogens more than twice the level for safe drinking in the area. And there's a chemical 11-DCE, which is used to make plastics and flame retardant coatings. And again, it causes cancer in humans, liver disease, nervous system disease, and lung disease. And that was the chemical that spilled from that train, 30,000 gallons of it in 1978. So it's still there. It's still causing a problem. And it even caused a problem upriver, which they did not expect. And I know when I was nursing my firstborn, which would have been in probably 1980, I had to be tested for my breast milk to make sure it didn't have too high a degree of mercury, because mercury was being transferred from the mother to the baby. Well, I was okay, but to this day still, there are warnings that you can only eat so many fish in lakes because of mercury poisoning. So I guess what I'm getting at is SHTF might have already happened for you or a member of your family. It might be you have been exposed. You could have also been exposed in work. And it's a hidden one. It's not like something that's going to hit you in the face and you go, oh, I know it's SHTF. But if you're buying any new property or a new home, you may want to carefully test the well water and do it for more than just the routine testings, because routine testings does not bring up PFAS. And also maybe have your soil tested and see what industry was in the area and was there any toxic events. Because believe me, these are more likely to happen than the super volcano. Well, I'd like to know what your thoughts are, and if you have any problems with contamination where you live, please comment below. As always, thank you so much for your support, and please subscribe, share the knowledge, and thumbs up if you like this video.